Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join our webinar. My name is Meredith, and I'm with Coastal Business Supplies. And today I'm joined by Jimmy Lamb from Sawgrass Technologies. Jimmy is the Manager of Education and Communications at Sawgrass, and he has over 25 years experience in the apparel decorating industry. Today, he'll be providing us with education on how to decorate apparel with sublimation. With that, I'm going to turn it on over to you, Jimmy. Take it away.
Well, thanks, Meredith. Great to be here. This is by far one of my most favorite subjects because I've been doing apparel decoration for a long time. As she mentioned, 25 years of it, but I did start when I was 5, so do the math. Anyway, we're going to talk about apparel sublimation, and we're going to look at, first of all, the traditional way of doing sublimation on apparel, specifically 100% polyester. Then we're going to talk about blends, and we're also going to talk about some other new products and concepts that are out in the marketplace. So taking a quick look at the actual specific topic list, as I said, traditional sublimation process. Then we're going to look at doing vinyl transfers on non-poly, but there are sublimation transfers. Keep in mind, everything you see here is sublimation. Okay, so we're going to talk about using a dry transfer process to be able to put sublimation onto non-poly, a wet transfer process to put sublimation on non-poly. There's a lot of non-poly here, right? We're going to mention a couple of things like Tuile and flock as well. So that there's all kinds of new things happening in the world of sublimation for apparel, and we're going to try and get a good look at each of those as we go. As always, feel free to ask questions. You just type those in, they come over to me, and I'll take them and answer them as we go. If we don't get to your question today or you come up with something later, call Coastal. They got a great tech support team. They'll help you out. And you're also welcome to call us as well at Sawgrass. So we're always here to help. That's where our goal is. So let's get in and start talking about the processes. First one is traditional poly apparel sublimation. Now, the biggest complaint you get with polyester sublimation is what we call transfer lines. And you can see one here. And it's sort of a razor thin line that is where the edges of the transfer paper meet the actual apparel itself. So when you pull the transfer paper away, we're left with what? Basically a rectangular box around the logo. Now, I'm a marketing guy, and I've been known to tell people, listen, I'm not going to charge you extra this time because this is a brand new effect we just created called the window effect. You see, yeah, we have a frame around your logo now. It makes your logo stand out. It doesn't work very well, but that's always the idea. The problem here, though, is there's only one way to get rid of transfer lines, and that's with scissors. That means cutting the whole thing out. That's not going to work either. Now, I have an embroidery background, and a lot of times as an embroiderer, you would look at this and say, oh, that looks like a hoop mark. It's not. We cannot get this out. And we can get hoop marks out. We can't get this out. It is permanent. So this is one of the, like I said, number one problems we have with polyester sublimation, the one I hear more about than anything else. So I'm going to take you step through the process and to show you how to avoid this happening. Now, before we do that, I want to add in one extra thing. Even though sublimation goes hand in hand with polyester, we have found over the years quite a few polyester shirts that do not sublimate well. So keep in mind, even if you're using the right process, you need to experiment with different brands to figure out which one works best for you. All right. I know some of the better ones do cost more, so everyone's looking for a low-cost alternative, but you're going to find shirts that you're just not able to sublimate, even though they are 100% polyester. So do keep that in mind that you need to do some product testing. Also, when we talk about the process here, we're going to talk about high temperature foam. That is something that's available through Coastal. So if you haven't used it before, you want to get some, contact Coastal and you can buy the kit. All right, so step one, using the foam process. With this foam, what we want to do is basically trim it down. It comes in a roll, okay? We basically want to trim it down such that we have a rectangular piece that is larger than the image but smaller than the paper. And we can use this over and over again. This is not like you got to cut a new piece every single time. I found that you can get about 100 pressings typically out of one piece before it starts to flatten out. So what I'm doing here is I've laid the transfer onto the roll of foam, and I'm going to actually mark the edges of the paper there with that Sharpie so that to start off with, I will have reference to cut out a piece exactly the same size as the paper, and then I'll trim it smaller, because remember, very important, it must be smaller than the paper, larger than the image. Now keep in mind, if you're always printing shirts with the same size transfer paper, then you're just going to cut one piece and use it until it flattens out, right? Now, you may be one who's using a couple of different sizes, so you would make a couple of different sized pieces of foam to go with your different transfer papers. So typically that distance that we're looking at is in about 1/4 of an inch from the outer edge. So the foam itself is usually about 1/4 of an inch less in each of the 4 directions than the paper itself. So mark it and cut it. And it's easy to cut because you just use regular scissors, okay? But you'll find that no matter how easy it is to cut, you'll cut crooked, and it'll look kind of icky, and that's okay. It doesn't matter. Also recommend that you bevel the edges. So if you look at this going down the right-hand side of the foam, it's actually beveled, it's angled, okay, it's angled inward, and this is the orientation of this foam sheet. If I laid that foam down right now on the platen of the heat press, this is where I want the angle kind of moving towards the inside of the foam itself. This is just going to help soften the edges. Again, it's easy to cut, but you wouldn't believe how hard it is to actually bevel consistently when you do it. So it doesn't have to be pretty at all. Don't worry about that a bit. So we're going to bevel those edges in, and then we will actually have our sheet done. And you can see how ugly mine is, right? Uh, but there it is. And you can see the paper sticking out, so that tells you what? That I got it cut to the right dimensions. It is smaller than the paper, but it has to be larger than the image. So there, I have that done. It's going to be on the very bottom because I'm going to form a bit of a sandwich when I put everything together for production. And so let's move on. We have our foam cut. That's our first step. Now, once you've got it cut, you can use it over and over again. Our second step is to adjust our settings on the heat press to some very non-traditional settings. Now, I recommend as a starting point 35 to 45 seconds on your time, not 60, okay? 380 to 390 degrees, not 400. And the pressure as per compression. What the heck does that mean? Well, I'm getting ready to show you. But a couple other things on these parameters before we move on. Notice I'm giving you a range. Ideally, you want these on the higher end of the range, okay? Because you really ideally want your temperature to be 400 degrees. Ideally, you would want about 1 minute for press time. But the realities are typically with sublimation on polyester, we can't quite get that high. So the idea is we want it on the higher end, not the lower end. But with each different brand that you experiment with, you're going to find it probably falls somewhere within that range. That's why I have the range there. So keep that part in mind. So what do I mean here, though, with the pressure when I say as per compression? Well, this is one of the few times we get a visual indicator as to the correct pressure. Most of us, we have a heat press with a big black knob, and we adjust the pressure with the big black knob. And we don't have a numerical reference unless you have a pneumatic press. And I think that there's a couple of presses out there that aren't pneumatic that do have some numerical references on them, but most don't. They just have a black knob, right? So what we want to do is take that piece of foam that you cut and then put it between the top and bottom platen, no shirt or anything like that, just the foam all by itself. And then you want to adjust the pressure on the platen so that when it's fully closed, it doesn't compress that foam by any more than 1/2 of its original height, which you can see right here in the picture. And that means that the top and bottom platen won't even touch when this is closed, which might seem a little scary when it comes to setting your pressure, but this is what we want to do. To make this even easier, because I'll tell you, when you got a beveled edge, it's a little harder to see it compressing by half. It kind of can be a little misleading. What I have done next to my heat press is I cut a small piece of foam. It's about 6 inches by 6 inches, no beveled edge, and as straight edge as possible. In fact, what I did is I went to the corner, I went to the lower corner of the roll, where that meant that 2 of my edges would be perfectly straight, and the other two I would have to cut. And I keep that right next to the heat press so that when I want to set the pressure, I use that. I always use that like as a little template to slide in and set the pressure. I think it just makes it easier. So now we've got our pressure set, and we have our temperature, and we have our time set, and we have our foam cut. So where do we go next? This is where we start preparing for the pressing. As I say, we're going to build this in layers. And most of us have a heat press where just by the design of the heat press, we actually lay the shirt on top of the foam. Okay, we cannot stretch the shirt down around the platen. There's a few heat presses you can, but most of them you cannot. So you lay everything on that bottom platen, including the foam and including the shirt. In fact, we don't put the foam inside the shirt. Just want to be clear on that. The foam itself lies on the platen, the shirt lies on top. So I have the foam down. If you're going to do a whole lot of shirts, you may consider using just a little teeny bit of temporary spray adhesive to help kind of tack it down and hold it so it doesn't move around a lot, which makes it, as you do each new shirt, a little bit quicker on getting everything lined up. So the bottom layer is that foam directly on the platen. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover that foam with a piece of Teflon. Teflon comes in your foam kit that you're going to buy from Coastal. And of course, the Teflon sheet, don't ever cut it. Just lay the whole thing out over top of the foam. Next layer is going to be the shirt. But before we put the shirt down, we need to prepare the shirt. And the very first thing we want to do is, well, if we got a lot of wrinkles, we want to get rid of the wrinkles, which we probably should have already done. But one of the things about getting rid of wrinkles with a heat press for a shirt, for a sublimation, is that it's fine, okay? But keep in mind, and you can even do it with that foam piece already being in place, okay? You can just lay the shirt down over that foam, that Teflon, and go ahead and press it for a couple of seconds, okay? 3, 4, 5 seconds at the longest. And then open it up, pull the shirt out. It should be wrinkle free in the area that you have to press. Now let it cool a little bit. You don't want to put a hot shirt down and then put a transfer on top of a hot shirt, because once you put the transfer on the shirt, if the shirt's hot, the transfer itself is going to start gassing. And once we're moving that transfer around trying to line it up, we have a potential for ghosting. So you don't want to ever sublimate a hot shirt. Keep that in mind. In fact, a lot of times what we'll do is when we have, say, a dozen shirts, we go ahead and press each shirt without anything on it to get rid of the wrinkles, lay it out so it can cool back down before we put it onto the heat press for the actual sublimation process. Okay, once you're ready to put that shirt down onto that press, you also want to get a lint roller, and you want to roll the entire surface of the shirt that will be underneath the heat press. We don't care about what's not under the heat press, but the entire area that will be under the heat press, not just where the transfer paper is going, but the entire area under the heat press. Hit it with that roller, and you'll pick up, you won't even see the stuff you pick up, but there's stuff that you can pick up that's pretty much microscopic that when exposed to heat will actually give you a little blue speck in the apparel that you cannot get rid of. So this is what we're trying to do, is get rid of the blue specks. And it's one of those things that you don't get them all the time. Even if you don't use a roller, you don't always get them. You just don't know when you're going to get them. So for that reason, you always want to just do the lint roller on every single shirt, because it's hit and miss as to when the blue specks are going to pop up. This will prevent it. Okay, now that that is done, I can take my shirt and lay it over the foam. And remember, we have a piece of Teflon over the foam, so the shirt's really on top of the Teflon, on top of the foam, on top of the bottom platen. And you can actually see the foam. I didn't do any adjusting to this photo at all. Okay, that's the true photo that I took, and you can see where the foam is. So that helps me line the shirt up properly in regards to the foam, because the foam, it has to be under the transfer. So that's what I need to do, is move the shirt around till it's situated for me to put the transfer onto it. Okay, so once we've done that and we're happy with it, it shouldn't really take you but a couple of seconds to do that. By the way, one little word of caution. See that tag there in the shirt? A lot of times tags get under the heat press, but they don't really withstand the heat very well. And you as a minimum, you'll probably smear the ink on it with the heat. But worse, sometimes those tags tend to start melting Okay, so you want to try and get that tag position where it's not going to be under the heat press platen. Just one of those I learned it the hard way stories. Okay, next thing we want to do is prepare the transfer. Now on the transfer, what we want to do is lightly spray it with a temporary spray adhesive. Light is the key word here. Hold the transfer out, at least 18 inches from your can, and just a real quick psh. Okay, all you want to do is just make it a little bit tacky. You don't want to like permanently glue it to something. So a very light mist. And as soon as your spray cans start getting a little older, because you don't use them every day, and they start to spit a little bit, you don't want to keep that can anymore. Once it starts spitting, it's throwing out a little glob, and that's going to cause a problem. What you want is a very light mist. If you get anything more, it's going to affect the sublimation. The light mist will not, amazingly. And again, you spray it to the transfer itself. There's two cans that I have here. The Scotch 3M spray mount is easy to find. You can find it at Walmart. I found it in office supply stores. I found it all over. Works fine on apparel. The Albatross 1077 is one that was designed for use with string printing, and that means there's fewer people selling it, and you're going to have to find somebody to buy it from. Now, the reason I show the Albatross is it's one of the few that I've tested, and I've tested quite a few, but it's one of the few that I had a chance to test that I was actually able to use it on non-apparel surfaces on some actual hard substrates instead of using tape. So that's the reason I have it up there. Before you assume it's going to work, though, like if you're going to do wooden plaques or something like that, always test it, of course. The 3M did not work so well on non-apparel. The Albatross did. That's why I have two of them there. Okay, we're going to put that light spray onto that transfer. And now we're going to go position the transfer onto the shirt, keeping in mind that as we push it onto the shirt, it wants to stick there, right? So as we go down to the shirt, we want it lined up as close to where we think the final position is as possible, and then just kind of lightly sit it there. Don't press it down, just sort of lightly sit it, look at it, see if it looks like what you want, and then go ahead and press down the edges. It's not a super tight fit. It wasn't meant to be. But shirts are notorious for when you open the heat press, if you didn't use an adhesive on the transfer itself wants to lift up off the fabric and shift slightly, which will ghost it. And part of that's because we have foam down underneath it. Remember, the foam is compressed. Foam is pushing everything up. Plus, there's a little bit of a vacuum when you open that top part of your heat press. So if you've done this properly, it will not shift and you will not get ghosting. Once we have that done, now we lay our blowout sheet. And you know, I'm not a big fan of Teflon for the blowout. It comes with the heat press. I prefer newsprint, one shot use only. Or we say newsprint, a real good alternative is the paper that you wrap your dishes with when you're moving. In fact, I got a whole box left over from a move with some of my college kids of paper from U-Haul. Works really good, okay? But we're going to cover that because that prevents any stray ink from gassing out from the shirt and getting onto the platen of the heat press. Okay, once we got that set up, that sounds like a lot of work. But see, once you're actually doing it and everything's set up, it goes pretty fast. It's only a lot of work when I have to explain it to you, right? So we're going to go ahead and press our shirt now. And as soon as it's finished, we're going to open that. You're going to carefully put your hand down the shirt without burning your hand, just to hold the shirt firmly in place at one corner of the transfer. Then grab the corner of the transfer closest to your hand, and then smoothly and slowly pull it up and away from the shirt. Don't accidentally drop it down on the shirt because it's hot, because that might cause ghosting. But that's what we do. Don't use tape, because when you use tape, it's too hard to pull the paper off, and we end up stretching the shirt in regards to the surface of the transfer itself, because the tape's only on the edges. So if we're pulling hard on the edge, the center part of the shirt can move while it's still under the transfer and ghost it. So don't use tape on shirts. Use this method. Peel that thing away there, throw it away, and you should be good to go. And if you've done sublimation on a 100% polyester shirt, you should have good colors and colors that will not fade, crack, or peel when laundered. Okay, that's the beauty of 100% polyester. Experiment with shirts. So I've used different brands. have worked well and others that have not worked well. So you would need to experiment to see what works best for you. And the settings may vary depending on the brand. The settings I was showing you are the ones that Vapor recommends. By the way, they're the ones who make the foam. Those are what they've recommended for their shirts. But if you actually go look up a list of their shirts, you may see much more specific settings for each brand that, or each style of shirt that they have. Okay, so let's talk about blended fabrics. Can we do blended fabrics? Yes. Okay, we can. There's two simple rules for blended fabrics. Number one, at least 50% of the fabric is polyester. Number two is the remainder of the blend is a material or materials that can withstand approximately 400 degrees Fahrenheit without melting. So polycotton, for example, meets that. But if you're doing a tri-blend, and a lot of the tri-blends are like poly, cotton, and nylon, it might have a problem with the nylon. Try it and see. But nylon will melt at anywhere from easily in that 380 degree to 400 degree range that we're doing typically with shirts. For me, when I do the 50-50 shirts, I don't use the foam. I haven't found a need to use the foam with the 50-50, so I'm pressing these shirts more like traditional sublimation products. No foam there, and I'm really setting it up closer to 400 degrees. Still experiment a little bit there with that temperature. So you do have to play with some of the different settings to see what happens. Now, the one thing that's going to happen for sure is when you're doing a blend, you can see the shirt at the top is actually 100% polyester. The one down below is a 50-50. Notice the difference in the color of the image. The top one is got, brighter, more vivid colors, and the bottom one has sort of a washed out look. And that's just one term we use for it. You can use that to your advantage because there's a lot of applications where that type of look is actually desired. And we use keywords like retro, vintage, distressed, those types of things. And honestly, I'm not kidding you when I say this. Honestly, I have actually used that to my advantage to get more margin out of the shirt by telling somebody like this surf shop here that the distressed look is really in right now, and we can do that for you. Think your logo look really cool distressed. It's going to cost just a little bit more because it's a special process, but I think you'll find it worth your while. Well, here's the beauty of this. As far as production costs, it's exactly the same to do it on the 50-50 as it is on the 100% polyester. As far as product costs, a 50-50 shirt sells wholesale for less money than a 100% polyester shirt. In fact, a good quality polyester t-shirt might be $6 wholesale, whereas you can find a decent 50-50 easily for $2 in most cases. So you're told the customer it's going to cost more when actuality it actually costs less to produce. So you charge them more while producing it for even less money. So I like the way that works. And that's where it's important to understand that because it looks faded doesn't mean it's bad, but use the right words. What's the right word for that market? Distressed, vintage, retro, okay, keywords like that. Use that to your advantage. Don't just automatically drop the price of the shirt because you could buy the shirt wholesale cheaper, all right? That's not a good reason for lowering the price of the shirt. The reality is building as much margin as you can, so be creative on that. So we can do the blends. Now keep in mind when we're doing the blend, the reason it does look faded is the fact that the sublimation will not bond directly to things like cotton, bamboo, wool, rayon, any of those. It's only bonding to the polyester. Now because of that, an interesting thing here is if you've been doing polyester shirts, you know that they don't fade when you launder them, right? But blends do, okay, at least one time. And so this is what I want you to do. First time you're going to do blended shirts, you get at least 3 of the exact same shirt, put the exact same thing on all 3. Take the first one, and I always label them with a number on the tag so I can remember what's what. So I'll label it number 1 and I'll put it aside and I won't touch it. I'll take the next one, I'll label it number 2, and then I'll wash it and dry it one time. And I'll take the third one, I'll label it 3, obviously, and I'll wash and dry it anywhere from 5 to 10 times. And what you want to do is look at the degree of fading that occurred, over a period of washings. And typically what you're going to find is from the right hot off the press through the first washing, there's a very small amount of fading that happened when you washed it. And what it did was it got rid of the ink, the sublimation ink that really didn't bond but looked like it did. And so you may see a very small 5 to 10% fading in that first washing, but after that you shouldn't see any more. And that's why I say go ahead and wash that third one 5 or 10 times and then compare it and see if it continually fades or if it just faded that one time that first wash. And that's typically what happens. Okay, but depending on the quality of the shirt, the materials, and everything else will have an effect on how much of it fades. Okay, so keep that part in mind. All right, so let's move on and talk about colored fabrics, because when we go into sublimation, you might have heard white's the only color you can sublimate. Not true. It's the best color you can sublimate. It's not the only color though. We can certainly do other colors, but the thing about when we add sublimation dye to something, we have the ability to make that something, in this case a white shirt, darker, but we can't make it lighter. All right, so we can only add dark, colors to it, or but we cannot add light colors, or we cannot take color away. Does that make sense? We can't take color away. So if we try to do a black shirt, you can't see it because we can't make it any darker. Okay, our darkest color is what? Black. So if we put it on black, that's all you're going to see is just black, period. We cannot make the black shirt lighter, therefore, us putting colors onto it, you just don't see it. Okay, and it's not just sublimation, other processes have the same problem. Now, we also cannot produce the color white because we don't have the ability to make that color. We're using 4 colors of ink: cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And when we combine those, we get this wide assortment of about 640,000 different colors we can produce with the Sawgrass sublimation systems. But the one color we cannot produce is white because there is no combination of CMYK. So for us, when we print on a white surface, we leave the area that we wish to be the color white open, in other words, no ink, and therefore the surface itself makes up for the white color. So you can see on this shirt, there's an area here where it's a round banner and it's white, and really what it is it's no ink, and so it's the shirt itself. If this was a red shirt, the inside of that white circle there, that donut shape, would be red, okay, because that's what the background color is. So white is the best color. We get the most brilliant ink colors. We can achieve anything just about in the spectrum when we're putting it onto a white surface. Now, what about light colors? Well, we can do some light colors. Where we have to be careful is, number one, we don't have white ink. So when you look at the blue shirt, you'll notice that the eagle's neck is blue. But look at the difference in color between eagles and eagles. The blue background of the shirt affected the ink color that went on it, so that eagles, that doesn't look quite the same as on a white shirt. So if we start putting sublimation onto light colored shirts, we may have to go back into our artwork and tweak the color to try and get it back up to the level of what you see here. But that's just that background blue mixing in or blending in somewhat with the color of the ink, because digital inks are what we call translucent or transparent, meaning that whatever the background is can have an effect on the color of the ink that's put down on top of it. So how is it done then for doing darker colors? Because certainly the screen printers can do it, and direct-to-garment printers, a lot of them can do it, and even some of the laser printers, or at least one laser printer, can do it. Well, what they're able to do is they put down a white base. So here you can see the base or the foundation for a logo that's going to be placed on top of it. So now they have a white base on top of the dark base. If they didn't have the white base, they'd have the same problem we do. And then they're able to put the actual true image on top of that white base. And so that means all the colors show up, and the areas that need to be white are left open here in the football, so the white base shows through there. They're able to do that because they have what? They have a white ink base, but we don't have the ability to do that currently, so therefore we cannot do it with ink. There's ways that we can do it with material like vinyl, but we cannot do it with ink at this point in time. So dark colors typically will not work for sublimation. You can get into something like, if you want to go to a red, for example, if you're doing red, you can certainly put black letters on it. You can probably put navy blue letters on it. So the key is when you go to darker colors, you can put inks that are darker than that color on there and they'll show up. but as the color of the apparel gets darker and darker and darker, it limits the colors that we can actually put on it. Quick question in step 6, prepare for pressing. You cover the foam with a piece of Teflon prior to pressing the shirt. Can newsprint or alternate be substituted here as well? I don't feel like the alternate works there as well. The reason it's Teflon is very smooth, and because it's really smooth, it's helping to, again, get rid of any of the edges. We always trying to get away from any kind of sharp edge, and even though foam is soft, you could have a sharp edge from cutting. So the Teflon actually does work better covering the foam than using the newsprint. But as far as covering the shirt for pressing, I would use a newsprint over the Teflon. Alrighty, let's go to our next section here. And now we're going to talk about sublimation on non-poly apparel. That always gets everybody's attention. Now, with anything else, there are some applications here, and every application has limitations. Okay, everything has limitations. There's no one perfect solution here, and keep that in mind as we go, that we have some different solutions that can be used, but we don't really have the ability to truly sublimate on non-poly. Sublimation will not bond with cotton, but there are ways to put it on cotton. There's a difference, okay? So sublimation, we actually bond the molecules of the sublimation into the molecules of the polyester. So they use what we call molecular bonding to actually make the ink go into the polyester fabric instead of on top of. If you look at other things like screen printing, direct-to-garment printing, a lot of the inkjet transfers, laser transfers, they all bond to the top of the surface of the fabric, whereas sublimation bonds into the fabric, but it only bonds with polyester, even if we're trying to put it on something different. But there are some things that can help us along the way. So let's take a look at a couple of them. Keep in mind, at Sawgrass, yes, we make the inks and we're making printers, but we also work behind the scenes with other companies who are trying to create new processes for sublimation. And a lot of times you don't realize the part that we've actually played. And in the next products that I'm going to show you and talk to you about, in each case, we've actually worked with them to develop the right color management to make sure that we get the best colors working for their particular product. So the products I'm going to show you, we don't make the products, but we have put together the proper color management, what we call profiles, to ensure that our inks work to the maximum level on these particular products. So keep that in mind. There's a whole lot of stuff we do at Sawgrass, and one of them, of course, is trying to help you by things like webinars. All right, so let's take a quick look at color management so you understand where I'm coming from. This is the simplest way I've put together for color management. I think it's easy for you to understand. When we take an image, whether it's a photograph or a graphic, and we go through the process of applying it to something like this plaque here, there's different things along the way that affect the color. The printer can have effect on the color and cause the color to shift. See, if it didn't shift, it'd be a nice straight line, but the reality, if the printer is pushing on this, the way the printer interprets the color could cause this color to shift. So what came out of the printer may not be exactly what was here. The same thing with the ink. The ink can have an effect on that image as well. Believe it or not, the sublimation transfer paper can have an effect on the color. And finally, the actual substrate itself can have an effect on color. Speed can also have, how fast we're printing can have an effect on the color. So we have different things that are being forced against the color that is trying to change the color as it moves through production. So our goal is, if we understand what those forces are, we can compensate for those forces so that hopefully we get the best and the most proper and most accurate image coming out onto the surface of the product. So for those of you who are using the Sawgrass system and using the Virtuoso Print Manager, that's one of the things that Virtuoso Print Manager is doing. It's helping to assure that the color goes through properly, and that's why when you're using it, It does ask you basically what substrate are you putting it on, what paper are you using, how fast are you printing. It already knows your ink and your printer. Unless you have multiple printers, then you would have to choose which one you're using. And from that, it can come up with compensation factors to try and get the correct color output for the situation. It also helps to control the dispersal of the ink, how much ink is required for the project at hand. So we've also added in new profiles for specific new products that have come out that we're getting ready to look at that are also part of this process of you selecting the right profile for whatever it is you're applying to so that you get the best use of ink and the best color. All right, so let's look at a couple of those. The first one we're going to look at is vinyl, and the product is Easy Subli Vinyl, which is manufactured by Caesar and sold by Coastal. And with the Easy Subli Vinyl, what they've done is create a vinyl that can be sublimated to. And now what we have done is two things. We do have a specific ink called the Easy Subli ink that was manufactured specifically for the vinyl. But if you're using your standard ink, not the one for vinyl, you're using what we call our HD ink, okay, our Sublijet HD, you can still print on the vinyl, okay? And if you bought Easy Subli system, not only can you print on the vinyl, but you can print on the non-vinyl products too. All we did in this case was come up with an ink that was really specifically for the vinyl, but you can still use your regular inks and you'll be fine. So don't get hung up on that. All right, so you actually take the vinyl and you feed the vinyl through your printer. So you're buying it in sheets, and instead of using transfer paper, you just run it through the printer, it prints it straight onto the vinyl. Works really good with all colors. I haven't found a color limitation need here. But with vinyl, like with all vinyl products, you will need to trim it. So once it comes out, if you haven't used it before, vinyl's in like two layers. The top layer is the one that we print, and then it has a bottom layer that's attached as a backing, basically. And then what you'll do is you run it through a cutter, and Graphtec makes cutters, Silhouette makes cutters. So there's different cutters out there, but when you run it through the cutter, what it does is it just cuts down through that very top layer, which is the vinyl itself, and it trims along the edges, and then you peel that vinyl off and you can throw the rest of it away. Maybe an oversimplification, but that's pretty much what you're doing there. So it does have to be trimmed once it comes through, but you run it through the printer, and then you go over to your cutter and you feed it through the cutter, and you set up a cut file, which I'm not going to teach you how to do here because I don't know which system you have. And then it's going to cut it out, and then you go apply it at that point. You don't use the heat press until you're ready to put the vinyl on the shirt. And it does two things. Number one, it brings out all the color, okay, because it's activating all the sublimation gas onto that vinyl. It printed to it, but now we're actually bringing out the colors by adding the heat and the pressure. And at the same time, it's bonding the vinyl to the surface. This is a very lightweight vinyl, I got to tell you. I mean, some vinyls come in different weights, different thicknesses. It is a very lightweight, but it is a vinyl, all right? But you can put it on cotton. You can put it on bamboo. You could put it on rayon. I mean, anything that can hold the temperature, and the temperature on this one is 312 degrees, I think, for this particular product. Amazing, because that's a lot lower than 400, right? But that's just how we're able to interact the ink with this particular product. You can put that on black because the vinyl itself is white to begin with. You're sublimating onto white vinyl, and that means, like you see here on the face of this tiger, you see all the white there? That's actually the vinyl itself, okay? Because we sublimated onto it. When we cut it, we just cut around the edges, trimmed out the edges, put this on, and it worked. But it is vinyl, okay? So it's sublimation on vinyl. The vinyl is on practically any fabric you want to put it on. So it opens the door. The right application, this could be a great thing for you. It may not be right for every application. Okay, we understand that, but it is another tool that any of you can use. If you have our system, you're already ready to go because of the fact that all you got to do is buy the vinyl from Coastal and go to work. And you will find that there's a setting in your VPM. If you go to the bottom of the substrates and you do have the latest version of VPM downloaded and installed, you will actually see heat transfer vinyl. It won't say Caesar, it'll say heat transfer vinyl, but that's the setting you want to use. If you're actually using the Easy Subli ink, then when you set your system up, they did some other changes in VPM specifically for you. We'll leave it at that. Okay, that's a cool product because we've been playing with that quite a bit. Here's a product that is available in the marketplace, and it's an example of what I call dry transfer. It's meaning that you print on the paper and you use it whenever you want. Wet transfer, which we're going to look at next, means you print on the paper and you use it immediately. But this is a dry transfer. So the paper, you can print on it today and press it tomorrow if you want. It doesn't really matter. It's also not self-weeding, which I'll explain that as we go. Back when we were talking about the vinyl just a minute ago, remember we cut the vinyl, it's in 2 layers, and we're going to peel the vinyl up and off of that back layer and away from any of the excess vinyl that we didn't need. There may be sections, like for example, if you did a donut, okay, and you pulled the donut up and off of the backing paper, there's vinyl in that very center area of the donut. Maybe you don't want it there. So you have to remove that vinyl. So weeding is a process of removing unwanted vinyl traditionally. Well, sometimes it goes beyond vinyl. When I first printed with this product here, the Subli cotton, I got really good colors out of it. And all I did was I put the paper in the printer and I set the right profile for it, printed right on the printer, and then I needed to go apply it. Now, initially when I went and applied this onto the shirt, I got a little surprised when I pulled the paper off and threw it away. This has in it a binding chemical, and the binder, the reason they put this chemical is sublimation won't bond to cotton, right? So you got to add something into the ink to make the ink actually stick to the surface of the cotton, and it's done in the paper. So in the paper, there's an additive so that it blends in with the ink and actually makes that ink bond to the surface. Well, the additive is everywhere on the paper. Get that? It's everywhere. You see all the white area? That's got additive there as well. Problem is when you put this on with a heat press, the additive blends in with the ink, but anywhere there's no ink, the additive transfers all by itself. And what can happen is that you end up with a faint rectangular image that is in the same shape and size as the transfer paper, okay? We call that a polymer window. That's not something we really want, all right? So the best way not to have it is what? Trim the excess paper away. Well, if you have a cutter and you're able to set it up on the cutter and you got to be very careful of that depth of the blade where you can trim off the excess paper, you can certainly do that. If you didn't have that, you have to do scissors, okay? I learned that the hard way. I had to use scissors because it's not self-weeding. I found that it was much easier to trim the bottom one here with scissors than it was this one up here. So just keep that in mind. It looked good, it worked well, but we had to worry about that excess paper. Okay, just like if it was vinyl, we want to get rid of the excess vinyl, we want to get rid of the excess paper. So that's what I mean when we talk about the dry transfers, and that's just one product. There's several different products in the marketplace that work the same way. Now, Forever makes one called Sublilite No Cut, meaning it's a self-weeding paper. You don't have to cut anything. That's why they call it no cut. And this is one that Coastal carries as well. And with this particular one, it's a wet transfer. So that means right after you print, you need to press. That's important. When this one, the excess areas, the white areas, nothing transfers from those white areas. Only with the ink. It only transfers where the ink is, and the binder only transfers with the ink. Everything else is left behind, provided we do it quick enough. If we don't do it quick enough, we will have problems. But that's why we call it self-weeding. I call it wet transfer, but also self-weeding because the paper doesn't need cutting. You run the paper right through the printer and then you go press. Now, what I found on Forever is that the images, the best images to transfer are ones that have bolder colors of ink. Light colored inks on Forever don't work as well as the bolder, darker colored inks. So like any product out there, you're going to find there's a range of applications where it works well, and then when you get outside that range, it may not work so well. So the best way you do that is figure it out by testing it. And that just means before you go tell a customer, yeah, I can do that cotton shirt of yours, before you do that, you want to actually go print and press a little bit, experiment, see what works good, what doesn't, how you have to play with it, and whatever. That will make a big difference in the long run. So keep that in mind. And then you also have to kind of pick and choose your your graphics. The one up there with the playing cards, originally the playing cards didn't have a black outline, they had a light gray outline. Well, remember the white's not coming across, and that light gray didn't come that well because it was so light, so they didn't really like playing cards. So we actually went back, it was a vector file, so it wasn't too hard to do. We went back into the vector file and then put a black outline on each card, and then they came out great. So that was just one of those little things you had to experiment with. Okay. All right, so we've looked at vinyl. We looked at the dry transfer, which you have to, or weeding, you got to cut it out. And then we looked at the wet transfer and non-weeding. And then that takes us up to two other products, and then we'll kind of wrap it up from there. One of them is, and these are two brand names, and I don't think that Coastal actually carries these. There are some different brands out there that are Tuile and Flock. So I just want you to be aware of them, that you can actually buy pieces of Tuile that have been designed for sublimation, meaning they have a polymer coating, and the same thing with Flock. And you actually just run it straight through the printer, and then you got to trim them. And what I was trying to accomplish, because I wanted to print on black, right? And you can see here is I didn't have a cutter when I was playing with these at first, except scissors. You see with the jackpot, you can tell where the edges of the paper is that I actually cut it. And part of the problem was the black here, that the ink is all created by ink, and this black here was the shirt. They're not identical. But if you can actually match your ink to the shirt and have a good, clean, sharp cut, it would look like you had kind of like directly subbed, even though it's on a piece of material, okay, either flock or Tuile. Tuile comes across as giving you sort of a fuzzy look, because Tuile is kind of fuzzy. But if you're working with people that do applique, like for embroidery, Tuile's a great one to use for that. And that's one thing. Flock works great for embroidery too. Or if you're just trying to do multimedia, give things a texture, it's just one more thing. So the conclusion of all this is keep your eyes open, because there's new products coming along, and there's also refinements to existing products, and you're going to find more and more things that you can use out there with apparel, including, for example, Caesar has a glitter vinyl product too that I've used. That's pretty cool. So if you want to get a little blingy look to it or whatnot. All right, then that brings me to the end of my presentation. And Meredith, are you still there? Did you fall asleep?
I'm still awake.
They're still awake. Good. I am too. That's a good thing. And I told you this was going to be 30 minutes, and look how long I went. Wow. You know.
Just a little, but it
Yeah,
was
I
good.
know. All right, then I think we're done here, Meredith. So thanks as always for inviting me in, and I look forward to our next one.
Thank you, and thanks everybody for attending. It was an awesome webinar as usual, and we look forward to the next one.
All right. Bye, everybody.
See you later.